When we present the subject of hypnoanalysis, we do not present it as a panacea nor an elixir. It is true that many times we get dramatic results, wonderfully dramatic results. Sometimes you're almost floored when you learn the causes of some of these emotional problems that people have and the emotional pains that people have. Nevertheless, I don't believe I've ever worked with anyone in my life that couldn't benefit by further help along the same line. So many times, because we get some amazing results, a person will say who stutters doesn't stutter from that time on. Does that mean that he is entirely helped? Oh, no. Further help is indicated. Just because he loses his stutter doesn't mean that he doesn't need more help. I have generally found that the victim of one neurotic ailment is apt to be the victim of more neurotic ailments. And I think everyone who ever has any hypnoanalysis done could benefit from further treatment, from further help. Now, last night we had a couple of dramatic results. The type of drama that is such high drama that in a Broadway show you wouldn't see so much drama as you saw last night. I think that's why you see so many of the men who were here last night, who are here again. We had a stutterer, a man who stuttered, and we took him back to find out the cause of his stutter. Now, if a mother brings a son or a daughter to you as a doctor and says, my son or daughter stutters, what can you do to help them? Here is your average course of procedure if you're not in psychiatry. You will say, well, I would recommend a good speech therapist. And now the child will go to a good speech therapist and he will learn to talk like that, except when he stutters. Because you haven't been treating a cause, you have been treating an effect. The stutter is the effect, it is not the cause. Every stutter has a cause. Now, in hypnoanalysis, you are enabled oftentimes to get back to the cause. And when you get back to the cause, sometimes you are simply amazed at what happens. But you'll always strike up against a situation which can be identified by this, that the patient reached a point in his life when he didn't want to talk but had to talk. And when you get that situation, you've got the cause of the stutter. Let me give you a situation that occurred a couple of weeks ago. I'm doing hypnoanalysis on a 10-year-old kid. He's been stuttering for a long, long time. I have to take him back till he's 2 years of age. And I found out that his stutter began when he inadvertently pulled a cloth and pulled a vase filled with water and flowers and smashed the vase on the floor. Didn't seem to me that this was right. But the patient, once this little boy gained insight, he didn't stutter anymore, and I said to myself, I hit the wrong thing, because that's not a difficult enough situation to precipitate a stutter. How wrong I was. Because further investigation disclosed that a year before, when he was 1 year old, his father had a birthday cake on the table. The kid came along. Now remember, the birthday cake had the candles on it, everything, but the guests hadn't arrived. And the kid, through some error or other, pulled the cake off the table and it crashed to the floor and broke in a million pieces. Now Mother, who had prepared the birthday cake as a surprise for Father, comes downstairs and sees the birthday cake on the floor and gives that little kid the devil. But he didn't get a stutter then. When did the stutter appear? When he duplicated the situation and brought down the vase. When he brought down the vase, then came the stutter. When I only got to the bringing down of the vase and the kid lost his stutter entirely, I said to myself, Dave, you're getting awfully weak, because that doesn't strike you as being the true cause of that child's stutter. Doesn't sound like it's a good enough trigger mechanism to start a stutter. But when I got the full story out, I could see how the first episode scared the little kid to death. And when he duplicated it the second time, with all the old panic coming back, and now Mother was really going to give him the devil again, now you found the cause of the stutter. And last night's cause of the stutter, we had one of the most dramatic things. Here was the situation. We took the kid back to 6 years old, couldn't find it there, couldn't find it at 5, couldn't find it at 4, couldn't find it at 3. And then we found it at 2 years of age in this situation. That little child had been raised by an aunt. And all during this period, when we brought him back from 4 years and let him see his birthday, and 3 years and let him see his birthday, and 2 years and let him see his birthday, each time he says, my aunt is there, and I love my aunt. And each time you wondered why he kept referring to the aunt, and the doctor who had brought him says, oh, he loves his aunt very, very much. And I wondered, very unusual for a child to love his aunt so much. But now here's what further work revealed. Here was the trigger mechanism of the stutter. The boy had been raised by a woman that he called his aunt, up to 2 years of age. And it was his real aunt. Now his mother, who is his real mother, claims the child. And the aunt and the mother get into a terrible hustle, a terrible fight. And this kid at the age of 2 is torn between the mother and the real mother and the woman he's been calling his aunt. Now the mother takes him, the true mother takes him, but because she's out of wedlock apparently, or some such thing, I don't know what the real situation was, that's why I say further work is indicated, we find the boy calling his real mother aunt. And every time he's referring to his aunt, he is referring to his real mother from that time on. Is that what you gentlemen got out of it? Or what did you get out of it?
I thought that the aunt was his real mother.
No, the real mother claimed him.
And the one that claimed to be the mother was really an aunt.
No, the real mother was unmarried is what I get out of it.
That's the one he called the aunt.
And that's the one he called the aunt, the one who raised him. That was his real mother. But he called her aunt. Anyhow, the stutter began in the fight between the woman who had raised him up to the time he was 2 years of age and the real mother when she claimed him. And this little child had to pick between two women that he loved. Now imagine a little child of 2 having to do that. There was a situation where he didn't want to talk because he loved them both. And that stutter was terrible. But I think that he will probably, as a result of the work we did last night, lose his stutter completely. It was one of the most dramatic cases that I think I've ever encountered in all the years I've been doing hypnoanalysis. We've hit into some terrific drama, and sometimes you don't hit into any, and hypnoanalysis can be dull and drab. But usually it's pretty dramatic. People don't realize that the same thing that can trigger a stutter can trigger other forms of illness, and a stutter is a form of illness. To my mind, the person who stutters is sick. There's a reason for his stutter. And nobody ever had an ache or a pain, which wasn't of physical origin, that didn't hurt just as much as any pain of physical origin. For instance, you ask the patient who has a migraine, or try to tell that patient that he isn't suffering pain. If you've ever had a migraine, believe me, the pain is unbearable. Is that right, Dr. Brown? It is just god-awful. We had in Indianapolis just a couple of weeks ago when we did a hypnoanalysis, a boy who had a terrible pain in his stomach. So terrible that he used to faint from the pain in his stomach. Now, nobody could understand why. The stomach seemed to be perfectly all right. It showed no pathology, and x-rays, everything else was done. There was nothing the matter with that boy's stomach, but when that pain came on, it was so terrific that sometimes he would keel over and pass out as a result of the pain. Where do you think we found that pain? The boy was in the Army. He was a private in the Army. He was a very naive boy, because one of those kids apparently who got in the Army when he was 17 or 18 years old. Now he happens to have the same name as his father has. And the name is J.B. something, but I remember the initials J.B. so well. And here's J.B. Brown Sr., we'll say, and J.B. Brown Jr. And they each have a checking account at the bank. The son has a checking account that's individual. The father has a checking account that's individual. The father made out a check which was deducted from the boy's account. There was a mix-up at the bank. The boy, of course, didn't know it. Now he's in the Army, and he has just made out about $500 worth of checks, enough money to cover, when all of a sudden he gets the statement from the bank showing that he hasn't got the proverbial pot. He hasn't got a nickel in the bank. The big check that his father drew of about $500 drained that entire account. And now the boy has made out $500 worth of bad checks. And in his mind, he is being court-martialed, he is being everything. Now, the pain did not come on at that time. He has managed to overcome the difficulty in the Army. Somehow he wired his father, and in the panic, the father went to the bank and straightened it out, and the boy didn't go to jail. Wasn't even court-martialed or anything for this passing of bad checks. And they weren't bad checks, you must understand that. He'd probably, he didn't know it, he would probably gotten off, but he didn't know it. To him, passing a bad check was a criminal offense, and brother, he was, if he had no money in the bank, he was guilty if he would be charged with it. But now I want you to notice what happened. It's 10 years after his father has made this mistake in his bank account, and now the father is in business with the son. And they begin to discuss some of the things that happened in the Army that had scared this boy. And the boy begins to tell his father about the bad check episode. And as he begins to tell the father the bad check episode, apparently the old fears recurred. And as the old fears recurred, there was the start of the trigger mechanism that began the aches and pains in the stomach. Because I got his thoughts out in hypnoanalysis 1 minute before the first attack. And as the attack occurred, the attack occurred simultaneously in an abreaction. And you saw again a reduplication of the original thing. Once he got that out of his mind, I'm sure he won't have any aches and pains in his stomach from there on, because he's never realized what caused them. Now that we were able to give him a little bit of insight into the cause of these aches and pains, the hypnoanalysis has undoubtedly helped him a great deal. We'll find people, for instance, right here in Chicago, where we worked on hypnoanalysis, say 2 or 3 years ago when we first began our classes in Chicago. Some of those people are free from their aches and pains. That's why last night when an old student came to class, and I said, some of our old students can tell you what they think of hypnoanalysis and what it has been able to do. He says, hypnoanalysis is the crown jewel of hypnosis. You might wonder why it is that a man like Freud, who was really the first to discover hypnoanalysis, stopped working with it. I happen to be a pretty good friend of Ed Bernays, who is a nephew of Freud. Ed Bernays, I don't know whether he's passed away by this time or not, but Ed Bernays is probably now in his 80s if he's still living. And he was probably one of the most famous publicists in America. He was the publicist for men who became presidents and things like that. He was a very, very astute man. And Ed Bernays and I were talking one day, and Ed had worked with his uncle. He had worked with Freud. And I said, Ed, will you tell me something about your uncle? Why did he give up hypnoanalysis? He says, Dave, let me tell you something. If he knew your techniques, he never would have given up hypnoanalysis. My uncle was the slowest hypnotist in the world. It took him 2 and 3 hours to hypnotize somebody with his old-fashioned techniques. And he never devised any new techniques. Consequently, when the drain upon his time became excessive, when he became a worldwide figure, and people were pouring at him from all sides to help them, he couldn't give time to hypnosis. He couldn't take 2 or 3 hours anymore to hypnotize one person. But I'll tell you what he told me before he died. He says that hypnoanalysis promised more than anything in all psychiatry. Now, this was a statement that Freud made to his nephew, and I can tell you that his nephew was speaking in what he believed to be absolute truth and sincerity when he said it. Or he said, Dave, if my uncle had only known your techniques. I feel certain that as the years go by, more and more doctors are going to learn the uses of hypnoanalysis and how it can be used. Dr. Cranus, walking out of this very same room, or maybe the next one, just the other day, said, Dave, the techniques in hypnoanalysis which enable you to bring forth repressions, you just can't imagine how valuable they are to the man in psychiatry. And he says, I think it won't be long before all medicine is using these techniques. And I said, Dr. Crane, you and a few other doctors and I are the only ones using these techniques. And it's a pity. It's a pity. Because I give you these records to listen to at the start of these lectures, and before you know anything about hypnosis, hoping that you will listen to them and get out the techniques. Learn the techniques. And I don't think 1 man in 10 learns the techniques. it's a pity. I mean, I've tried every which way to let doctors know that what I do with hypnoanalysis, they can also do. I say it because I know so well how the doctors who have used it rave about it. We have two psychiatrists in this class, and those of you who have been in former classes know that we've had other psychiatrists in class. But over the years, we've had over 150 psychiatrists in these classes. Not even all the psychiatrists use hypnoanalysis. Would you believe that? Not even all of them use it. And to me, that is a pity. For they can get out the causes of emotional problems. They can release inner conflicts faster. And they can do the patient more good in so much a shorter time if they would only all go for hypnoanalysis. But they don't. I don't know what there is about it that says, well, it's nice to use, but you got to use other things alongside of it. Of course you do. But right now in psychiatry, you ask any of the psychiatrists in this room right now, do they only use one technique in helping their patients? Good heavens, I bet they use 20 different techniques. Is that an overstatement, Doctor?
No, it's good for them.
No. We're going to start with something that we really left over from last night. And I want you to see how a person gets migraine headaches. And when you understand how a person gets migraine headaches, at least I think she was here, isn't she? Elaine, yes. Elaine, would you come up, please? Elaine, how long have you had these migraines?
20 years.
20 years? I don't want to be personal, but that means necessarily when you were quite a young kid. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How old were you? Do you remember when they started?
Actually, the first one I got was in 7th or 8th grade.
7th or 8th grade. Now, we're talking, of course, now about the migraines. Had you ever had a headache before that?
Probably, because I can remember wearing glasses.
Mm-hmm. And had the glasses been caused by eye problems?
Yes, I wore them for a very short time.
Mm-hmm. And then the headaches disappeared once you wore the glasses.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. Remember, we're searching here for the cause of a migraine. And a little bit of the background is just this. Here is a girl who had a terribly traumatic experience at the age of 7. We don't have to go into what that was. All I can tell you is that it was a horribly traumatic episode and involved an attack by an 18-year-old boy. Is that correct?
I'm somewhere
around that. He was a grown young man who held a knife to her when she was at the age of 7 and threatened to kill her sister, who was a sickly little girl and was getting all of Mother's attention, if Elaine ever told a living soul about the attack. And Elaine, frightened to death, was the subject of the attack. Now, she never got that repression out of her because she was afraid to tell Mother. And although she was on wonderful terms with her dad, remember, she'd been threatened that if she ever told anybody, this boy would come over and use that same knife on her sister. Now, that's where we begin. But this did not cause headaches. It probably caused her a lot of emotional conflict. But it did not trigger recognition of headaches at that time. Probably did other things, but it didn't start the headaches. So we're going for the cause of the headaches now to see whether we can learn at what point the headaches occurred. I hope that in my telling that story, little 7-year-old kid, you realize is not responsible for what happens when a knife is held to them. You realize that, don't you? So, I mean,
Yes.
So, I mean, in talking about it, there should be no reflection on you. You realize that. All right. Elaine, take a good long deep breath and close your eyes. Now, relax completely. Let every muscle in your body go limp. And let those eye muscles relax to the point where they just won't work. Now, take a good long deep breath and just let every muscle relax again. Double that relaxation. Now test your eye muscles and make sure they won't work. Now let that feeling go right down to your toes. By this time you've relaxed sufficiently, I know, so that when I lift your hand, it's just going to be as limp as a dish rag. And let it be limp. Let it just, that's it. Oh, that's perfect. Now we're getting someplace. Now, Elaine, we've got the physical relaxation that we want. Let's get the mental relaxation. Start counting from 100 backwards. Each time you say a number, double your relaxation. You'll find that by the time you get down to 98, you'll be so relaxed there won't be any more numbers. Start with that thought in mind and make them disappear.
100.
Now double your relaxation, Elaine. Double it completely. Let yourself go limp all over. Now if you can still see any more numbers, say them and they'll all vanish. They all gone? Maybe they're gone already. Let them go if they're gone. They all gone?
Oh, I'm mixed up.
All right, let them vanish. Let them go over the hill. Let them just vanish completely. They're all gone. All right. Now, Elaine, I'm going to... It's when you're in this state, when you're relaxed like this, both mentally and physically, once we prove that we can make you forget, we can also prove that we can make you remember. You may think that everything you've ever lived through in your life is just a memory. As a matter of fact, everything you've ever lived through in your lifetime is a part of you, and still exists as a part of you. And when you're in this keenly aware state that you're in now, we can take you back to any time of your life and let you relive any incident, anything that's ever made an impression on you. We can have you relive it all over again. I'm going to take you back and let you see yourself as a little girl in the first grade of school, because that's where we're going to pick you up. When I snap my fingers, you'll be in the first grade. You'll see the first grade as clearly as you saw it when you were in school the first time. You'll see the teacher, you'll see the desks, you'll see the kids, you'll see you'll see everything. And if you walked up to the window, you could look out of the window and see the same scene that you saw as a child when you were in that first grade of school. Now, I'll count to 3, snap my fingers, and you'll be in the schoolroom, and you'll be about 6 years old in the first grade. 1, 2, 3, and here we are. There we are. Elaine, take a look around you. Take a look at the teacher. Do you like this teacher?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And what's her name?
Miss Rich.
Uh-huh. And that child that sits catty corner from you, way in the other side of the room, furthest from you, who is that?
Guy.
Who is it?
Guy.
Guy. I'm coming up to your chair, and I'm going to ask you, Elaine, how are things getting along at your house?
They're fine.
Uh-huh. How's Daddy?
Fine.
How's your mother?
She's fine.
How's your little sister?
She's fine.
Uh-huh. She hasn't been sick lately, has she?
No.
She hasn't been sick. Okay. Now, tell me, Elaine, do you know what a headache is?
No.
Don't know what a headache is. All right. And now we're going to promote you to the 3rd grade. We're going to have you skip a grade, and when I snap my fingers, you'll be in the 3rd grade. Here we go. Elaine, you're in the 3rd grade now. How do you like the 3rd grade?
Well, I
You like school?
Yes.
Good. Like this teacher?
Yes.
Your teacher's a nice girl, huh? Nice woman.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, Elaine, do you have to take care of your sister very much these days?
Not really take care of her. There's not much I can do. I wait on her.
You wait on her? Uh-huh. And how is she? How's her health?
No, well, she's better.
She's better? Has she been sick?
Yes.
Elaine, last year when you were in the second grade and you were 7 years old, something happened. Have you ever told anybody about it?
No.
Nobody in the world?
No.
Nobody knows this but you?
No.
Did that boy ever come back?
I saw him.
Did he say anything?
No, he never said anything.
Did he do anything?
No.
Are you scared of him when you see him?
No, I did what he wanted. That's all.
So you're not scared of him when you see him?
No.